Before we start, can I remind you to turn off your phones, please? And if you feel like tweeting, of course, do it. I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Florence de Changy. I'm a reporter with Le Monde and French National Radio, and I'm also the president, freshly re-elected, of the club. So, no, well, thank you. Yeah, it was a very easy election. As you know, I was not challenged, so... Anyway, to today's lunch, it came as a little chat we had with Guillaume quite a long time ago when he was introducing the idea that Australia would be the country of honor for the coming Vinexpo. And having lived in Australia back a very long time ago when the wine was not yet as great as it is now, I frowned a little bit and I said, really? And then he insisted, you would be surprised that Australian wines can be just as good as French wines. And I was like, what? So then I invited him to come here for a lunch and a presentation. And Guillaume was adamant that he would not speak unless you guys were drinking at the same time. And we normally serve wine in small quantity, etc., and people are in a rush to go back and work. But today you're going to drink no less than 4 wines. I hope you canceled all your afternoon appointments. And we're going to try and work out which is what. You're basically drinking. I mean, I think Guillaume will explain all this. But just briefly about Guillaume Deglise, that we are delighted to welcome here. He's the leader of Vinexpo, as you know, which has been extremely successful in Hong Kong. Under his leadership, Vinexpo has remained the European reference with the Bordeaux edition, and the Vinexpo Hong Kong, as I just said, is really the leader in Asia. There are 3 new key events which have been created over the years. Vinexpo goes in Tokyo since 2014, goes to New York since March, just now. Yeah. And Paris is in a project. I think we don't need to say much more. I'd rather let Guillaume introduce the wines and today's format. Please welcome Mr. Guillaume Deglise.
Oops. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be with you today. Thank you very much for having me at the Foreign Correspondent Club. It's an honor to be here, my first time in this beautiful house. Congratulations, Florence, for your re-election. Great move. And yeah, I'm going to talk about the wines, but just before, just to give you a very short overview on probably who we are at Vinexpo and especially about the market for wine. You may have also questions about that, to which I will be delighted to answer a bit later. Vinexpo, as Florence said, is a trade show. It's only open to trade people. It's a B2B show. It's not open to the public. And we've been very successful here since we started in Hong Kong back 20 years ago. We're going to celebrate the 20th anniversary this week. And as you probably know, the city is packed with winemaker dinners, with events on wines and spirits, because apart from the show, Vinexpo also brings a lot of winemakers and a lot of trade people to the city for the week. It started already last week, and it's going to continue towards the rest of the week. So it's really a big event, and that reflects also what we created in Bordeaux more than 35 years ago. In fact, Vinexpo is a brand that was founded in Bordeaux in 1981. But although it is a French brand, although it is still a Bordeaux-based company, we do not promote more French wines than any other wines in the world. We actually also promote all wines of the world and all spirits of the world. So the idea for us is not to say Bordeaux is best or Burgundy is best, or it's really to try to promote the industry and to try to promote the producers. As Florence said, we've got other events. We've got now New York, we've got Paris, which is scheduled for 2020. So the company is growing. But we're also known for the data that we are producing on the state of the market, which we are producing together with the IWSR, which is the Institute of Wine and Spirits Research based in London. And it's a great tool for the industry to get to know what the trends will be for the next 5 years, or what is to be expected in terms of consumption. And I'd just like to say a few words about that. Before that, what to expect this week at Vinexpo. We have with us 1,460 exhibitors, which will make this exhibition the largest ever organized in Hong Kong. That's a very good sign for the industry. That's a very good sign on the health of the market. These exhibitors come from over 30 countries in the world, and we expect about 18,000 visitors to visit the exhibition this year. And my guess is that probably almost 50% would come from mainland China. When we started in 1998, mainland China was a very tiny market. I will recall my first ever visit to China. That was precisely in 1998, and market was very, very different at that time. We'll organize this week lots of tastings, seminars, masterclasses, conferences. Of course, you're absolutely invited to join us if one of these tastings or conferences would be of interest for you. One of the key highlights of this exhibition this year is that Australia is the country of honor, and we're delighted about that. Australia is a very major player in our industry, a very fast-growing country in the area in terms of wines. And we also wanted to pay tribute for the success of Australian wine this year, and we're going to have 150 wineries coming from all over Australia to Hong Kong. That's the biggest number ever, actually the most famous brands will be with us in Hong Kong, and some of the challenging brands also. So it will be very interesting to see the different styles, diversity of wines from Australia. I'm also delighted today to actually introduce my good friend David Lucas here, who is the director of Wine Australia, the government body for Australian wines. You're based in China, and you're in Shanghai, and you're in charge of all Greater China. Just a few words on the market, because when we talk about wine, sometimes it's difficult to really put figures on one industry. What are we talking about? Today, the consumption of wine in the world is 2.6 billion cases. One case is 12 bottles. So 2.6 billion cases. It's been growing, of course, but in terms of volume, it's rather flat. It's been rather flat since 2011. The main reason is that the European markets are decreasing slightly. Change of generation, we drink less, we drink better in Europe, but better still counts for 57% of the total consumption of wine in the world. So the growth would come from a little bit America, although it's been quite flat these days. The US market is number one market for wine consumption in the world. And that will come also from Asia Pacific. Asia is the fastest growing market at the moment, and it's very much driven by mainland China. Japan, which is the second largest market in Asia, is rather flat or even decreasing. So we're talking with mainland China about a market which is not yet mature. To give you an idea, the consumption per capita in China is 1.4 bottles per year. Consumption per capita in France is 45 bottles per year. Some of us drink much more than 45 bottles a year. Consumption in the US is 12 liters. There was liters, not bottles. 12 liters per year per capita in the United States. And the US is the the biggest market for wine. In terms of production, 50% of the production is in the hands of the three main players, which are France, Italy, and Spain. More than 50% is produced by these three countries. So after, we have the US and we have Australia, the fifth largest producer in the world. That is growing, and that is expanding its distribution towards Asia. I will keep it that short for the industry at the moment. Of course, if you have more questions during this lunch, I'll be delighted to answer, but I will not talk a bit more about the game of the day. We're going to have 4 wines, as Florence said. First, we start with white wines, and then we're going to have 2 red wines. One of each flight is French, and the other one is Australian. So, as I said before, we promote both at Vinexpo. I'm French, but I also like Australian wines. The idea is for you to, make the difference, try to guess, and simply tell us which one you like best, and try to understand them. And then within a few minutes, I'll get back to you with the answers. And I will also let my friend David talk to you about the OC wine. Thank you very much. Enjoy your lunch. Did you enjoy both wines? Yeah. I'm sure, David, you don't even know which one is yours. So, okay, we had two very different, rather different wines. We selected the Australian wine first, and it's 100% with one grape variety. I wanted then to find a French wine which is quite close to it, and I failed. So it's a different grape variety. But sometimes these both grape varieties are used together to make some of the most beautiful wines in the world. So we've got wine number 1 and wine number 2. Which one did you prefer? Who votes for 1? Are you sure, David? Okay. Who votes for 2? Okay. Right. So, welcome to France, David. So yeah, the French one is the number 1. And Australia is number 2. Tu amèneras les bouteilles? In fact, the first one, I mean, again, there are lots of differences between both wines. The first wine is a very, it's still very fresh, okay? It's rather young. It's a 2013. The grape variety is? Any idea? Is it a Chardonnay? No. It's another very famous grape variety. It's Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is grown almost everywhere, from Sancerre in France to obviously Australia, particularly South Australia, I guess. From Chile to California, in Italy as well. It's a very aromatic grape variety which you can find almost everywhere. Probably the best example, the best expression would be in the Loire Valley. It comes from the Loire Valley, all right? This is the grape variety that is used in Sancerre, but also in Pouilly, Fumé. Okay. But there is another, it's not from, I mean, the French one does not come from this region, actually. It's also a very important grape variety which is grown in Bordeaux. And I just wanted to come with a white Bordeaux because I believe that Bordeaux is obviously more famous for its reds, especially here in Asia. But Bordeaux makes beautiful wines in whites as well. Usually you can find the great Sauvignon Blanc in the region which we call the Entre-deux-Mers, which makes rather simple Sauvignon Blanc. But this one is much more complex. It is actually aged in barrels for at least a year. It comes from the region, from the appellation Pessac-Léognan, which is the closest appellation to Bordeaux, in the south of Bordeaux. And this is the place where probably the best white Bordeauxs are produced. But usually, for the best of them, the best Bordeaux whites are blended between Sauvignon Blanc and Sémillon. And you can find also a little bit of Muscatel. But it's Sauvignon Blanc, Sémillon. Here, it's not the case. It's 100% Sauvignon Blanc. The wine is Chateau Gazin Rocancourt, vintage 2013. We'll arrange the bottles to be on the table later on. It is owned by a Belgian family called the Bonny family, I think since 2006. It's a very, very old estate that dates back from the 17th century. I think the property, I did a little bit of studies, the property is 22 hectares on one block, which is rather difficult to find in this part of Bordeaux. So it's a beautiful wine, very complex, but still very fresh, rather easy to drink, lots of expressions, lots of aromas, floral, also a little bit of peach, of melon, some sort of exotic flavors, which is quite typical from this part of Bordeaux. Very different from the silex sort of taste that you find in Sancerre. So again, very specific Sauvignon Blanc. And then, so number 2 is Australia. And the interest of this wine is that there's no Sauvignon Blanc, but it's 100% Sémillon. So the grape variety that I just mentioned, which comes from Bordeaux. Sémillon is the grape variety that we use for the Sauterne, you know, the sweet wine from Bordeaux, the most famous sweet wine in the world, is usually Sémillon, almost 100%. In this case, this is a Sémillon from Australia, Sémillon which is grown in various parts of Australia, but the most famous area in Australia where Sémillon is grown is the Hunter Valley in New South Wales. And this is exactly where this bottle comes from. This is a bottle from Mount Pleasant, that's the name of the producer, and Lovedale is the name of the wine. It's a very classic Sémillon from the Hunter Valley. And the vintage is 2010. So it's a much older wine, and Sémillon can age beautifully, actually. There's a lot of potential of aging for Sémillon. And the wine is probably not as aromatic as the first one, okay? But it developed some sort of very delicate, smoky flavors, smoky perfumes. I thought it was beautiful with the fennel that we had with the Gravlax. It's quite a complex one which can age an extra, I don't know, David, what would you say, but an extra 5 to 10 years probably. Easily, 10, even 10, yeah. And it's already a 2010 vintage, so it's already 8 years old. Anything to add?
You want a mic?
Yeah, I think you should have a mic. Would you like to come? You don't want to come? So yeah, it's owned by, what is the name of the family? Mac Williams. McWilliams, right. Yeah, all right. Exactly. There's an association of which is called the Australian First Families of Wine. The 12 of them will be at Vinexpo tomorrow. Is it tomorrow, Wednesday? I think tomorrow. It's the first time that they come at Vinexpo, and we are so delighted to have them with us this year. So one of these families is the McWilliams family, the owner of Mount Pleasant Estate. All right. That was surprising, right? So now comes the red. I'll let you taste them, and I'll be back to you then. Enjoy. So, these two wines have something in common. What is it? The grape, yes. Color and the grape. Yes. So, what is that grape variety? Over there? Merlot? Any thought? Shiraz? Pinot Noir? Pinot? So, ladies and gentlemen, first news of the day. Australia is not just about Shiraz. So yes, this is a grape variety for which Australia is famous for, but today we have decided not to offer you an Australian Shiraz, but to go for Pinot Noir. So that's Pinot Noir. And the other one is also Pinot Noir. So we've got two Pinot Noirs. Where in France does Pinot Noir come from, apart from Champagne? Burgundy, yes. Yes, Burgundy. Could be Alsace. Could be... What else? The Loire Valley. Bravo, Madame la Présidente. Yes, Pinot Noir can come from Sancerre as well. Delightful Sancerres. And then you can also find it in Languedoc now. So we tend to grow some Pinot Noir in some more southern regions also in France. And Pinot Noir also can be grown, is grown a lot in the United States, now in the south of Chile or in the south of Argentina. Obviously in Australia, and obviously in New Zealand as well, and a little bit in Italy as well. So it's a grape variety which is very, very trendy at the moment. It offers some sort of very delicate flavors. It's not very full-bodied, it's more lighter-bodied, although some of the richer Burgundy or richer Australian or Californian Pinot Noir can be quite full-bodied as well. So according to you, which one is the French one? Is it number 3 or is it number 4? Who says it's number 4? And who says the French one is number 3? So there's a slight majority for number 3, right? Yes. Okay. But it's a bit 50-50, in fact. So there's no way you can agree with each other, but it doesn't matter. So if we have a slight tasting, what do we see? In terms of color, it's pretty similar. This is very typical Pinot Noir sort of color. We see that the number 4 is actually slightly darker, right? Where the number 3 is, I wouldn't say pinky, but it's got a lighter sort of color. Probably lighter and more red than the second one. Sorry, than the number 4. In the nose, number 3. It's very delicate, right? It's lots of perfumes, but it's very delicate, subtle nose. lots of perfumes, probably lighter bodied than number 4. Do you agree on that? Yeah. And in the mouth is very fruity, very, I mean, easy to drink, but not like a big wine. It's very, very delicate. And yeah, not that long on the palate. But I think this is also because this is a rather young wine. Okay, the number 3 is a rather young wine, I mean, to be tasted now, let's say. Number 4, more aromatic. It's quite more full-bodied than the number 3. Slight darker color, as we said. And in the mouth is already quite developed, very nice, very good to taste now. Can probably age for an extra 3 to 4 years, but it's a great wine to taste now. It's very fruity, already starting to develop some hints of, some third sort of characters. So what did we say? Number 3 is lighter. Number 4 is more full-bodied. It means that number 4 has probably faced more sun than number 3. And it also means number 4, I mean, this is my feeling also, is that the aging, or let's say the winemaking techniques have been more in touch with new wood for number 4 than with number 3, for which in number 3 the wood is not that obvious, right? It was definitely made with wood, was in oak barrel, number 3, but number 4 too, but number 4 probably was newer oak barrel than number 3. So it just develops more character.
I think you're giving too many clues there. Not that I know much, but what I hear about, yeah.
So I want you to change your mind now and to find... So having said that, so you said, for most of you, that number 3 was French or Australian? So who says French now? Number 3, yeah. Right. Okay. Right. So number 3 is Burgundy. It is a wine from France. And tu peux nous chercher les bouteilles, s'il te plaît? David, come on. Number 3 is from Burgundy. It is a Gevrey-Chambertin. You've heard so many times about this beautiful village in the Côte de Nuit. It is in the north of the city of Beaune, which is the wine capital of Burgundy. And you can see this very classic Burgundy bottle, Gevrey-Chambertin. It's Domaine Trappet. It is one of the most famous estates in Burgundy. It comes from a parcel of roughly 3 hectares in the middle of Gevrey-Chambertin. It's a Gevrey-Chambertin village. So this is not a premier cru, not a grand cru, for those of you who are familiar with this classification in Burgundy. So it's a very easy wine. I mean, it's a wine that retails for probably 450 Hong Kong dollars. Slightly more maybe, but not more, yeah. So Jean-Louis Trappet is the producer. And it's a very, I mean, this is vintage 2014. It's not the best vintage in Burgundy, though, but it's still a wine that can be aged for 5 years easily or even more. But it's very delicate, lots of perfumes, typical Burgundy style. The second one, the number 4, is from Australia. and comes from a region which is probably one of the most esteemed regions for Pinot Noir, right? It's Yarra Valley. Yarra Valley is in Victoria, yeah. It's Victoria, and so we are in the south of Australia. So, which a cooler climate. We say that Yarra Valley is usually one of the coolest climates that you can find in Australia, and this is why it's a very good area to grow Pinot Noir there. And Yarra Valley has made tremendous progress in the last few years to make some of the best Pinot Noirs in the world. And yeah. You mean that producer? The Yarra Valley. 80 years? Under the 80 years. Are you sure you don't want to come on stage, David? No, you still don't want to. Yeah. So yeah, it's Yarra Valley, and actually it's a case for lots of vineyards in Australia. They have some very old vines, sometimes much older than in France. Although we've been growing wine in France for a longer period, but vines are sometimes very, very old in Australia, and that's the case here for Yarra, in the Yarra Valley. The vintage here is 2015, okay? 2015, so it's a younger wine, although I had the feeling myself that the number 3 was younger. That's really my feeling, but again, it's difficult to compare two regions like Burgundy and Yarra Valley. Climates are, of course, very different. Although we say Yarra Valley is cool climate, yes, it is, but Burgundy is actually much cooler. Any question from the audience?
Questions or comments as well?
Yeah, comments, don't hesitate. Yes, please. Do we have a microphone somewhere?
Yes, someone will move
Yeah,
a microphone. And please briefly introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Antweiler. I'm a retired person in Hong Kong, but a lover of wine. I enjoyed this very much. And thank you for all of your comments. The question I have is, you did not really mention among the top producers or the top quality wines anything from South America. And I'm just wondering if you have general comments about Chile and Argentina specifically.
I do. Now, we love South America, and to give you an example, at Vinexpo, we are very lucky enough this year to have the 3 most iconic wines doing a presentation, doing seminars. We're going to have Viña Almaviva, which is a joint venture between Concha y Toro and Baron Philippe de Rothschild from Bordeaux. We're going to have Closa Palta, which is the major label, the iconic label of L'Apostol winery. And we're going to have also Viña Senia, which is a joint venture between the Chadwick family from Chile and the Mondavi family from the United States. So these 3 labels are probably among the top Chilean wines, and we're very, very lucky to have the 3 of them at Vinexpo this year. But to go beyond this, Chile, Argentina, not to mention Uruguay also, which is coming to pick up. These are countries that are exporting a lot overseas, especially Chile, whose consumption on the local market is actually very limited. So most of the Chilean wines are actually exported. Argentina is very different. In Argentina, most of Argentinian wines are actually drunk in the local country. And in Argentina, making wine, drinking wine is part of the culture. So it's a very different approach from Chile. These wines have made tremendous progress over the last few years, and both in reds and whites, actually. And this is, although Argentina is much more known for red wines, but they also grown their local grape variety, which is called Torrontes, which is grown mainly in the north of the country. But it's a fairly simple wine, but it's mostly red. part of the success of these countries is that they found their iconic grape variety. You go to Chile, they are known for a grape variety which is called Carmener, which is originally from Bordeaux, which was rediscovered in Chile because Chile is a terroir which was not affected by the phylloxera, which was a disease that killed all vineyards in Europe in the early 1900s. So we had to craft American rootstock in Europe and then have our own grape variety. Chile was not affected because of the ends. So Chile has a very beautiful terroir, very, very unique terroir. And it's famous for Carmener. Argentina is famous for Malbec. The Malbec is Argentina's main grape variety, although it's grown in other parts of the world, but it's very famous for that. And even Uruguay, they have found their own grape variety, which is Tanat. Tanat also is originally from France, and Uruguay is very famous for that. So, and we'll showcase all these wines at Vinexpo this year. And the presence of South America has been very strong for years now.
Next question or comment, if you want to comment about your own taste of these wines. Yes, gentleman there. Please introduce yourself as well.
No, just a question about the storms that have been going on in France the last couple of days. Do you have any news on that or concerns about the 2018 vintage?
Yes, it's we heard the news 2 days ago, just like yourselves. Lots of damage in the vineyards, unfortunately. The sadness about it is that it's been 3 years in a row in Bordeaux that the vineyards was affected. It's mainly Bordeaux and Cognac which were affected. From the reports that we get, the regions of Côte de Bourg and Côte de Blaye were extremely affected, lots of damages. About 5,000 hectares were actually, I wouldn't say destroyed, but very much impacted by hail. Apparently the great terroir of Pauillac and the Médoc, generally speaking, the south of Médoc was also affected. Pessac-Léognan, where the white Bordeaux comes from, was also affected. But Saint-Emilion was not really, and the north of Médoc either. But yeah, we're very much concerned about that. And yeah, we look forward to welcoming the producers from these regions at Vinexpo this year, but I'm sure the ambiance will be slightly different than expected.
On this one,
I don't think
Burgundy,
no.
the south, any storms there?
It's very local Bordeaux.
on this very topic, I have a small follow-up questions. I was yesterday with people who are in Bordeaux, and I was saying, why don't you protect your vines to some extent, even though I understand that when hail is so big, sometimes it's as big as a tennis ball, even the nets will be broken. But the person replied, well, in France, we're not allowed to protect our vines, whereas in Australia, apparently, you are allowed. And I was wondering, I thought that was very odd. Is that true?
Well, I wouldn't say that we're not allowed. Firstly, it's extremely expensive. And they found in other regions of the world, like in New Zealand, for instance, I've seen that a lot in New Zealand. They found a way to try to move the storms when they arrive. You know, so they have the huge sort of devices. How do they call that? How do you call that? Yeah. Cloud seeds, yes. And they've been quite successful with that in New Zealand. And that exists a little bit in France, though, already. But in Bordeaux, it's true that protecting all vines that would be too tough.
But it's not forbidden?
I don't think so.
Okay. I'll tell my friend, whom you know.
Another question, madam.
Thank you. Hi, Lucy Colbeck. I'm a writer, but nothing to do with wine, apart from I like to drink some every now and again.
Good on you.
You covered South America, so I wondered if you could possibly cover South Africa as well.
Sure. We're traveling a lot today. Well, Africa, you know, it's mainly South Africa, although grapes are also grown in the north part of Africa, and Morocco, Algeria has a long tradition, but it's not exported or not exported anymore. But it's mainly South Africa. It's South Africa, you know, I had the chance, and I guess some of you too, to travel to South Africa to taste the wines, and I really understood that South Africa is not New World. It's not New World at all. I mean, the style, the traditions is much more like old world, like Europe, than South America, North America, or Australia. So South Africa, to me, it's very special. It's a fantastic terroir. I think this is a very much an underestimated region in the world, and it's good for those who know, because they can purchase great bottles. They are fantastic, fantastic wines, fantastic Shiraz, fantastic Pinotage, which is one of the very unique grape variety they have. But great Sauvignon Blancs. We had a Sauvignon Blanc before. There's some fantastic Sauvignon Blancs there. So they grow lots of grape varieties. And they have this notion of terroir, as we have in France, or as you can find in Italy or Spain, that makes South Africa so different. And it's a rather cool climate as well. It's been very hot, especially last year. There was a drought, a very important drought in South Africa, with a limited production. Unfortunately, they were also very affected by problems in the vines, but it's a very promising country, according to me.
Understanding.
I'd say a bit of both. Lack of volume, I'm not sure, because you can find some very strong producers, but they have some, the iconic producers, just like everywhere in the world, and they have limited production. It's more a lack of knowledge, and it's also due to the South African country itself. Their currency, as you know, is very weak, so that one would understand that it's a good way to export, right? But in fact, they've not been considered as one of the top producing country in the world, unfortunately, yet at least. But there's a new generation of winemakers coming now, which I think would be they would make a lot of noise. Some of them, some of the best winemakers, will be exhibiting in Hong Kong this week. So I just can't wait to go and say hi and test a few wines.
Thank you.
We still have time, yes, for one more question, then Jody. And then, because this is a special lunch, it's not a usual format, I suggest everyone takes their time to quietly finish their cheese. I hope you're enjoying the good French cheese, by the way. And, and you can have more wine as well, so just wave at your favorite one, just say 1, 2, 3, or 4, and enjoy more of the wine, which has been very generously provided by Wine Australia and by Vinexpo, I guess. And will David come and say something? Or no?
David enjoys his cheese.
Exactly. So we won't hear of David because he's enjoying his French cheese. So last question for Jody. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jody Schneider with Bloomberg. Can you talk a little bit about organic wines?
Yeah.
We've heard a lot about this lately. Everybody seems to be an organic producer. What does that mean? Is it a real thing?
Organic, actually the first wine, the number one, the Chateau Gazin Rocancourt, it's an organic wine. It's not only organic, it's biodynamic, so which is the highest level, or highest. I wouldn't say biodynamic is better than or simply organic. It's just a different way of thinking, and especially a different way of winemaking, but this is a biodynamic wine. And I think the Domaine Trappé as well, by the way. Although I'm not quite sure, but I think it is. But organic is really becoming more than a trend. It's simply a reality. And sometimes for us at Vinexpo, we don't feel that comfortable with it, because our job is not to say organic is better than conventional. We like both, we defend both, because both are being sold, right? Having said that, for the first time in Hong Kong this year, we are bringing a full section of organic wines under a sort of a new brand, which is called WOW. WOW stands for World of Organic Wine. And we're going to have more than 60 producers coming from all over the world presenting their organic wines. The tricky thing about organic wines is that it really, I mean, the winemaking, say, rules are very different according to each country. It's very strict when it comes to Europe, and it's less strict when it comes from United States, for instance. I'm not quite sure about Australia, David, but so that's a little bit the problem we have. But it's been a really strong trend in Europe. I think it will pick up also here in China, and that's the reason why we bring these winemakers with us this year. For the time being, it's not yet there here. I mean, in Europe, you have these gurus saying that only organic wines are great, and we have even more gurus saying that the natural wines are great. Natural wine means there's no sulfites, there's absolutely no pesticide, nothing. That you have to observe some very strict rules about producing these wines. Yeah, it's a very different style of wine that I would not like to comment now. But anyway, it's very difficult when you taste the wine number one. It's very, very difficult to say this is organic and the other one is not. So and especially a lot of our greatest wines in France or even elsewhere, they don't even say that they follow organic or biodynamic, because for them it's not really a selling point. They just believe this is the best way of doing winemaking. So, and I think this is probably the best position to have. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think it was a pretty fascinating and delicious and yes, very interesting lunch. So to both Guillaume Deglise and David Lucas, join us just before Vinexpo opens, and we know how busy you are. It was really a privilege and a pleasure to have you. Thank you enormously.
Thank you.
And see you again soon.